very much. So just to sort of start off, I wasn't really sure what Harold said about me because my Swedish is not nearly as good as my English. But what I want to do today is kind of talk a little bit about where I'm coming from cybersecurity, what my background was. It's military and law enforcement. I worked in military intelligence and as a police officer in the military police in Canada. Yeah, we do have a military in Canada. It's very small. It's about 10 guys. But one of the things that I really are interested in is the human actors, the folks that are trying to wreck your day, the folks that are trying to break in and take intellectual property, customer information, mess with the payroll, ransomware your machines. So I was very interested in the human element. And as Harold might have said, I joined Hound Dog when it was Hound Dog North America, and I remember getting our first check from an MSP in North America, and I was the tech support guy for North America, and then when they decided to add Australia, I was the tech support guy for Australia as well, so I didn't sleep for about a year. When they closed down the Winnipeg office, they moved everybody to North Carolina, and I wasn't in a position that I wanted to go down to North Carolina. So I ended up applying for and getting on board with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, who are famous for a ride and big hats and horses. Now, I didn't get to do any of that, and in fact, I didn't actually even have a gun. I had a pretty cool badge. But what my job was a criminal intelligence analyst, and one of my first claims to fame was we took a whole bunch of police data, and we took a whole bunch of Facebook data, and we smashed it together with a tool called I2. And I2, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but what it does is it basically builds social networks. And by using math, and math is really cool, you would be able to look at these networks and start taking away pieces of it to find what's hidden. So it was an analytical process. And what did we do with this? Well, we were able to trace guns. We were able to interdict operations with regards to narcotics. And so my team was basically looking at open source intelligence information and our closed source police stuff and putting it all together to try and convince a judge that these are very bad people. And so that's what I was doing for about a year. Now, I was pretty excited because when the initial brochure said, you're going to be working, this high-speed criminal intelligence stuff, I was like, oh, this is awesome. So for the first 2 months, all I did was download the contents of cell phones that had been taken from drug dealers for 2 months. Every day I'd come into the office and plug this gigantic amount of cell phones that came in buckets, literally, because drug dealers have more than one cell phone. They've got about 10. And so we would download them into our database as part of trying to find out who was selling the drugs to who and how that whole supply chain worked. So that was kind of a fun job. So as I kind of evolved into this security space, one of the really coolest projects I ever worked on was something called the Canadian Museum of Human Rights. And as you can imagine, human rights in some countries is not very popular. In fact, the security questions that we had with this facility was really around allowing journalists and bloggers and things like that an opportunity to upload very unpleasant activity going on in these host countries. So the security problem here was now, we knew who our adversaries were, right? We knew it was probably the Chinese, who are not going to be adhered to our version of human rights, and any country that ended in stan, particularly the ones that we happen to be, embroiled in a bit of a conflict with overseas. So our threat landscape was known in this particular case, so we had to build a system that allowed folks to upload information anonymously and retain that information. It's an entirely digital facility where the presentations and the infrastructures all run on IT. In fact, 90 Mac Minis handle all the exhibit space, and as you can see, there's some pretty impressive back-end database structures as well as SAN and wireless access points throughout the facility. So what we did was we're a Tor exit relay, and we were utilizing the Tor network to facilitate the transport layer of this information sort of anonymously. But one of the problems was that if our facility was infiltrated by bad guys, the bad guys would be able to figure out, based on the content, and probably the uniforms of the people beating up the other people, where this actually came from and probably who was responsible. So our virtualized infrastructure was pretty cool because for every transaction that happened, so for every video upload or every piece or document that was sent up to us, we spun up a virtual server to accept that transaction, and then the virtual server disappeared. So no logging, no capability of actually even a person on the inside understanding where this content actually originated from and who might have been responsible for uploading it. So my team worked on the architecture for this, and it was a super exciting opportunity. Now, one of the things that I talk about frequently in presentations is the evolution of cybercrime. And just like the bad guys are evolving, your MSP business is going to be evolving as well. We think, Logic Now thinks, that security as a service is a natural evolution to the MSP landscape. We also happen to believe that we have some good products that you can kind of bolt on to create a bit of a security offering without having to go and do a bunch of expensive SANS courses, but to be able to provide your businesses a base level of security. And later on in Yuan's presentation, he's going to walk through some of those tools a little bit more in depth. I'm going to talk about the tools a little bit more broadly. So one of the things that we've seen is that the evolution of cybercrime, and I think the best quote from the Scottish police at Scott Secure was this: "It's impossible to fight 21st century crime with 19th century law." And so what the cyber criminals have done is they've essentially moved themselves into the 21st century, realizing that the 19th century laws and maybe even the 20th century defenses are woefully inadequate. So what we've seen now is theft. And we've seen theft on a grand scale. We've seen it from just credit card and financial transactions, but we've also seen it from the perspective of personally identifiable information, and we've also seen it from the perspective of intellectual property. And I'll give you some great examples of how intellectual property and the supply chain are being targeted by cyber criminals a little bit later on. The other thing we want to talk about is fraud. Fraud is, I'm going to say, at epidemic proportions in North America, Europe, Eastern Europe, and even in the Asian countries. Fraud is probably the #1 challenge that we have because back in the late 80s, we put all of our financial information on the internet. And when we did that, there were a few people locked away in the basement that said, maybe there's some security problems with that. And most businesses went, okay, let's just get on the internet because everybody's on the internet and let's use it for e-commerce. And we built this amazing infrastructure, but even you guys know that we have some basic fundamental problems with the certificates and SSL and encryption and poorly implemented algorithms that have lent themselves to a situation where the bad guys are being able to man in the middle of these transactions, duplicate these transactions, steal resources and credentials using memcats or off the wire, and essentially conduct fraudulent activity. It's a huge business. We've seen a bit of an evolution now as well in cyberspace to things like extortion and vandalism. So a great example was the threats that cyber criminals and hacktivists are making towards organizations about, I've stolen your data and I'm going to publicly reveal what a terrible company you are, okay? Or, I know you're completely dependent on the internet and I'm going to denial of service attack you unless you pay up. There are a number of different criminal operations going on that essentially are the equivalent, the cyber equivalent of threatening your business with a firebomb in order to get you to pay protection money. So we can see that, you know, with cameras and everything like that, when a guy comes into your store and threatens you, well, you can take his picture and give it to the police. But unfortunately in cyberspace, that guy might be on the other side of the world in a country who has a judicial system that can be charitably described as a magic 8-ball and a Doberman Pinscher, okay? So we have a huge problem. The next problem too is vandalism. So a lot of poorly secured small, medium business websites are getting taken over by bad guys. But it may not be, we're just going to put some pornography up there and embarrass you. It's actually now being used as a proxy attack or a bot command and control infrastructure. And essentially, hey, good morning, guys. Good morning. I just kicked things off. You missed about 5 minutes of my spiel. So please relax, sit down.
That's fine.
So essentially what we're seeing is vandalism, but it's more like I take over your poorly secured WordPress site and I'm now using it as a proxy box for an attack. So bot command and control, a place where I can put malware to trick you into doing drive-by downloads, a place where I can put malware and embed phishing links in emails and send it to you. We're not talking about a new service offering from Logic now called phishing emails. What we're talking about is what cyber criminals are doing with all this access that they're getting from these systems. One of the more insidious problems that we're seeing too is the embracement of the internet by the child exploitation folks that are out there. It's unfortunate in that because of these poorly secured systems that are being taken over by cyber criminals, in a lot of cases it's being used to harbor dark websites, and the majority of which are usually very distasteful material that will land you in jail in most countries of the world. So it is being hidden on small and medium businesses' websites and servers. And obviously you can imagine that that would be a pretty traumatic issue for a business. Counterfeiting. The internet has been a wonderful, I think, gift and service that we use. However, it has also facilitated counterfeiting on a massive scale. And this was an issue that Europol identified as being sort of the next generation of threat. And what do they mean by this? They don't necessarily mean documents, they actually mean products. And as I go through this presentation, I'm going to talk about a company that makes sinks and the type of problem they had. Yeah, sinks, like the stainless steel ones. The kind of problems that they had. But essentially where their biggest cyber breach was the AutoCAD drawings that they used to make their sinks that got stolen by a Chinese company that then turned around and got a factory to duplicate and counterfeit these sinks and sell directly to the customers at 1/3 of the cost. So this was an attack where the bad guys broke in, stole the intellectual property, fired up a factory to make this, and then directly targeted that customers, or that business's customers with fake product. So we're seeing these kind of attacks. The other issue that is coming into the forefront is the rise of 3D printers and the counterfeiting. Now, in general, from what I've seen, the home, small, medium business 3D printer does not make, I'm going to say, epic quality stuff. It looks a little wonky. It might be a little bit strange. It might be a little too bendy or a little too brittle. But make no mistake, this stuff is already being used to do counterfeit goods in a massive scale. Buttons, okay? Buttons on shirts. We would think that that's like, a couple of cents each. But there are massive factories that are now making these counterfeit buttons for the big brand names. Okay, so for like Gucci and all these kind of major brand names. So what's happening is the criminals have determined that 3D printing is going to be a great opportunity for them. Moving forward, we're seeing also the use of forums and social networking for criminal, terrorist, and human trafficking activities, okay? A lot of the issues that we're faced with in terms of jihadist movements are really perpetrated and facilitated by internet-based communication and social networking to find at-risk young people and convince them that this might be the way they want to go. Also, we've seen organized crime use this as a primary tool for recruitment into human trafficking, for promising opportunities with regards to illegal immigration. And one of the major issues that we're faced with today are a lot of refugees floating around in boats in the Mediterranean right now. And the human traffickers are essentially putting out a website saying, hey, for $5,000 US, I can get you to Spain, and getting them 3/4 of the way to Spain, which unfortunately is still extremely wet and extremely deep. The bottom line is this. Crime has evolved. It is now a professional industry. It is quite professional in that an Android development crew that I know of is creating SMS exploit kits using the Agile development framework. So they actually have a project meeting, these guys sit around, they determine that these are the improvements that we're going to make in our app, these are the SEO guys that are going to game the system to get their app pushed up when you put in a particular search term. They've got project managers, money launderers, etc. So this has evolved to the point where now, for the MSP, for the break-fix shop, you're the cleanup crew. You guys come in and are frequently dealing with this kind of professional break-and-enter crew that in cyberspace is sort of having their way with your customers. And to illustrate this, I love this because this is your computers that are getting hacked in business. So whether it's online gaming credentials where the Chinese are stealing your gold from your World of Warcraft characters and reselling it, to using it to actually do Bitcoin mining, to using it to host terrible websites, malware, ransomware, stealing the gaming keys, anything that you have on your computer will be monetized. Will be monetized. They will figure out a way how to make money with illegal access. And this could include everything from stock trading your portfolio while you're away on vacation. We're going to talk a little bit about that. From the small business perspective, these are some of the key guys that are wanted up there. Okay, so we're talking about Eugenie, who I'm pretty sure most of us here would like to choke out. He's the guy that gave us ransomware, CryptoLocker, and the Game Over Zeus bot. Sun, he looks so special in his uniform there. He's been indicted by Pennsylvania for hacking, and he's a member of the Chinese army. Pennsylvania is incredibly militant when it comes to cyber crime. This is because Carnegie Mellon US CERT is right there in Pennsylvania, along with the FBI Cyber Forensic Academy. I was in Pittsburgh speaking to a whole bunch of people that never talked about what they did, had short haircuts, and probably bulges along their hips. So kind of interesting there. Carlos is an interesting dude. He is for hire. He runs a Latin American carding crew that is basically part of, affiliated with groups like Lizard Squad. And this guy, Adam, unfortunately is no longer with us. Due to a drone strike, he was killed a little while ago. But I'm sure that there is a replacement doing social media for Al-Qaeda. Usually they recruit fairly quickly into that space. The question, though, that I have to ask you as MSPs is, do you really care? Really? Like, does it matter if it's the Chinese army, a Russian cyber criminal, or the kid in his basement? At the end of the day, your job is to protect your customers. At the end of the day, one breach is too many because now you're getting that call and you got to go out there and you got to find the media and the install keys and all this type of garbage because these people are trying to ruin your day. So, what I think we really want to do is we really want to talk about data breach and what we can kind of do to maybe prevent some of that. And we've seen some big breaches. Sony there, I put Team Lizard Squad up because they really wrecked Christmas for a lot of kids by taking the PlayStation Network down and the Xbox 360 network down over Christmas. They're really mean. Target and Home Depot and Wyndham, you know what, I'm laughing because giving this presentation to Europeans who are used to putting in their PIN number every time they use their card, you guys can laugh hysterically at the Americans as they try to figure out where all the money is going, right? Canada did chip and PIN a long time ago, and as a result of that, our incident rates of fraud with regards to credit card is not quite as extreme. But there is a cautionary tale in the Target and Home Depot, especially for MSPs. If you are still having to run Windows XP and it has any financial data on it at all, there's a very good chance I'm going to steal all your things, okay? The problem with Windows XP is that there's vulnerabilities in Windows XP that aren't patched anymore, which means that if you're using it as a general purpose computer, there's a very good chance that it's going to hit malware, that a Windows 7 box or a Windows 8.1 box, God forbid, or Windows 10, which is awesome, by the way, those boxes will ward off the attack if they're patched and updated. But unfortunately, XP has a bunch of fundamental problems with it. And in the case of Target and Home Depot, the cyber criminals were able to read the register, the memory location of where the credit card data was stored over and over and over again, made a giant 11 gigabit file which had about 50 million credit cards in it, and then exfiltrated that out to Russia. And this was because the Windows XP boxes use the same memory location to store the credit card information. They did not have something called address layout randomization, which later operating systems use, essentially to protect against buffer overflow, but in this particular case, it would have reduced the amount of opportunity theft, because the memory location that the software used to store the credit card information would have been different. And then we've got our beloved dare leader of North Korea, who essentially are completely batshit crazy and unpredictable. I have some opinions on Sony. I don't think it was the North Koreans. I think the North Koreans were delighted that somebody hacked Sony, but I don't think they were really the prime perpetrators of it. I would look at Team Lizard Squad or an insider and possibly part of the anonymous collective. Let's talk about Sony, because Sony's really fun, and I had the opportunity to talk to some people that worked on the inside of Sony. Essentially, they are completely demoralized. I think that comes from two places. One is being so badly hacked. The other is finding out that your boss is actually a racist. I think those two things were really difficult, especially reading about it when all the email was posted publicly. Sony was a new problem for us in cybersecurity and you as MSPs, because this was a malicious attack. This wasn't steal the data. Well, they did that. They took, 4 or 5 major motion pictures and decided to release them on public download sites. So there was good theft of intellectual property. That was fun. Confidential information, I think there's somewhere close to a terabyte of Sony emails that were lifted from their servers. Data destruction, all the machines in Sony Pictures Entertainment were bricked, as well as all the email servers were destroyed by malware. So that was fun. In fact, the only thing that the hackers didn't take from Sony was any money, any physical, actual money. They denial of service them into the nethersphere there. This was an unbelievably bad situation, to the point where America almost declared war on North Korea because a Japanese company got hacked. So we needed to step back in the community here and go, holy dear God, what is going on here when a Japanese company basically turns to the US government and says, we're helpless, come to our rescue. This kicked off a lot of discussions at the high level of the difference between nation state and what responsibility a nation state has for commercial enterprise. And these discussions are ongoing. The question is the largest company or one of the largest companies like Volvo or Saab, are those companies going to get government support if they come under cyber attack? It's a question that we're wrestling with. Now, what do you care about Sony? I mean, Sony's a big company and everything. You care because in one way or another, your customers are connected to Sony. Okay? It's like Kevin Bacon in 6 Degrees of Separation. Apparently everybody on the planet is somehow related to him. Well, Sony uses the internet. You use the internet. Some of your customers might either sell into the supply chain that Sony uses or have familiar relationships that work in that industry, in the entertainment industry. So every time a major breach like this happens, we have skin in the game. We are the equivalent of the neighbors watching somebody break into a house and throw all the property out on the front lawn. Okay? So that's sort of why I wanted to talk about the Sony hack, because this is your worst nightmare at the small, medium business level. It's when you come in and not only have they taken all the things, but they've wrecked all the things. It's the equivalent of robbing your house and burning it down just to be spiteful. One of the things that I want to talk about is email, okay? Email and interaction with the web is a problem. It's a problem for you guys because this is how bad guys are getting into systems and this is how they're infecting themselves. So the Verizon Data Breach Incident Report is a great resource to understand what is happening and the evolution of cybercrime. This is super disturbing that within basically an hour, you can pretty much be guaranteed an infection when a good targeted phishing email rolls up, on average. It's sort of disappointing, okay? 11% of people are going to click on an attachment, even though we've told them never click on an attachment bomb, ever, that you're not sure who it came from. And unfortunately, they do. A phishing campaign sent to 50 people will net 5 to 6 victims. That's 5 to 6 infected machines, okay, from a phishing campaign. So this is what we're up against, guys. And if you think that antivirus is just enough to get by, I think you're sadly mistaken. And I'm going to make a case a little bit and help my buddy out, Yuan, and talk about a bit of a defensive layered strategy. What else is happening? So basically, a campaign of just 10 emails yields a greater than 90% chance that at least one person will become the criminal's prey. Okay, these are the stats. And this is from the data breach, the Verizon data breach. And this is not just dumb Americans clicking on stuff, pictures of cats. This is Canadians, super smart Canadians that have served their country proudly. This is Europeans who are generally, I'm going to say, a little bit more aware of what's going on in the world. So these stats are super disturbing to me, and a really good opportunity to talk about the costs versus your investment in a technology like email filtering. Okay? When we look at these kind of stats, we're seeing some really interesting things. Look at email attachment. 40% of your malware that's coming in the door is because of an email attachment. An email with a malicious link at 37.4%. So that's, I think, 54%. 54% of your problems are email, either links in email or email attachments. Pretty impressive. Then when you look at web drive-by download, that's where you just go to a website like Forbes.com and now you've got a flash 0-day that gets injected with a JavaScript and that machine is now part of a giant bot. That's a problem. But when we think about what the threat looks like, 80% of the breaches reviewed in the report are attributed to external threats. Okay, this is email coming in unsolicited or a phishing attack, web links. 17% internal actors. Okay, we're not going to dispute the fact that Edward Snowden, in what he did to the NSA, was probably the most gigantic insider threat you've ever possibly imagined. Okay, not to get too much into the politics of that, but I'm just going to say that from an insider's threat perspective, the most dangerous thing is an IT admin with administrative privileges. We can get all the things. Which is really something to talk about too within your organizations, is that for your customers, if there's a way that you can start pulling local administrative rights back from your customers, that is a terrific and great idea to really talk about. This trend, I think over time, you're going to see attachment emails go down a little bit, because a cloud-based web filtering is able to take those attachments, open them up, and see what they do. And if they start going crazy and look weird in a sandbox, then chances are they don't get passed on. We kind of won a little bit against spam. That's the one thing we can say in cybersecurity that we did a pretty good job of, was getting rid of spam. Emails with malicious links are really, and web drive-by downloads, are an opportunity to talk about web protection. And web protection, pretty controversial in Europe, because it's been, I'm thinking, unfairly labeled as a bit of a security, focusing on a monitoring tool and a surveillance tool of employees, rather than a harm reduction strategy. Okay? So the idea here is to say, I'm not going to tell you what websites you're allowed to go to and what websites you're not allowed to go to. I am going to suggest that if you're going to controversial websites, there's a good chance they're going to be infected with malware. And from a harm reduction strategy, I would like to not have people visiting pornography in the workplace, because it's of higher risk to infection than it is to visiting regular websites. Now, one of the other opportunities that comes through web protection is the ability to talk about what the internet is being used for at that particular business. You are probably plagued, as an MSP or a break-fix practitioner, with the internet is slow. Okay? And we usually respond by saying, well, did you reboot the router? Reboot the router. Call me back. This will give you some analytical data about what the internet is being used for at that particular site. So because of hosted services, Salesforce, Office 365, you name it, it's going from the cloud, it's going to the cloud, it's going from the cloud. The cloud requires connectivity. The cloud requires high-speed internet links. If everyone is watching YouTube or soccer, football as we like to call it in the UK, I'm based in Edinburgh, so I'm translating Canadian into English, the real English, quite often. So we are in a situation now where you're given an analytical tool, and you can say things to the business like, I think you should upgrade your internet connection. And the business will be like, well, why should I do that? Well, your employees are watching an awful lot of streaming media and downloading movies. And in order to make sure that you can reach your business apps, you're going to have to increase your bandwidth. And they'll say, but I don't want to increase my bandwidth. Bandwidth is expensive. What is the solution? Well, the solution might be to, turn off those websites because it's consuming a lot of bandwidth. Or maybe only make them available over lunch hour and at the end of the day and in the morning. But because you're running a call center and access to your Salesforce online, or you're running voice over IP and you're making outbound phone calls or taking inbound phone calls, all of a sudden the internet usage becomes a problem. And you don't have to be the human resources department as an MSP. You just have to have data that you can give to your customers that says, this is what's going on, and I'm going to recommend a course of action. It gives you that analytical capability, and it helps you with the security issues. So let's talk about breaches, okay? What are we seeing? Public companies now and governments are treasure trove of personal identifiable information. Why has the biggest breaches in the last little while been focused on healthcare? It's because with personally identifiable information, I can file fraudulent tax returns for you and get government checks. I can take out loans, I can take out credit cards, I can do all these terrible things with personally identifiable information, okay? Financial services, the attacks are really interesting now. So the attacks for financial services go something like this. I go after the credit card data. Oh, you've actually now put in a whole bunch of protection. You've maybe even rolled out encryption. Ah, rats. Can't get at that. I'm going to go after the personally identifiable information, the names and the telephone numbers and the banking information and the date of births of our customers. Ah, rats. Because of the Chase breach, everybody's locked that down. Well, what's the next attack vector? It's on the actual banking system. I'm going to make ATM machines spew money out into the street while a whole bunch of people are waiting there with sacks, okay? So we've seen this evolution of all these type of crimes, and I'm going to talk about the Carbonic attacks in a moment, which really kind of bring it to a whole new level of crazy. Manufacturing. I mentioned the Sync company, okay? We did a security audit because they were having severe network problems. And we came in and we put some network analysis tools on, Wireshark, and we looked at their outbound network traffic with no one in the office over a weekend. And we quickly determined that there were a number of workstations that were talking to countries that really, when you think about it, a Sync manufacturer in the Midwest of Canada should probably be not talking to. Like, for instance, DNS talking to, on port 53 UDP, to Pakistan. That is probably not normal or desired. So we did our analysis and we determined that the infection was from a couple of computers that were on the production floor. And we identified which ones they were, and one of the machines was for a conveyor belt that ran the length of the factory. And then essentially, you know, the stainless steel will come in, there's some bendy, there's some weldy, there's some polishy, and it goes down this, this conveyor belt. And it was determined that this computer, now also I gotta say it's a union environment, okay? So no takey away anything, otherwise you have like union problems. So we asked them and we said, so how much per hour is your business gonna lose if this conveyor belt goes down? And they said, well, between $8,000 and $10,000. And I said, okay, well, you do realize that you're not even managing this computer anymore. Cyber criminals are. And here's the network traffic that suggests that this computer is actually part of a command and control network. It's infected, and it's talking to Pakistan. So I said, at any moment, the cyber criminals could lock this machine up, ransomware it, and because it's the main computer that runs your entire conveyor belt, you can see the blood draining out of the face of the manager. And I said, so what we need to do here is we need to figure out a way to get these machines off the internet. We need to isolate them, okay? And he was very concerned that there would be a union problem if they couldn't get to Facebook and they couldn't, you know, recreational surf. And I said, well, at $10,000 an hour, here's what we propose. We're going to put a wireless access point in there, and we're going to buy everybody Android tablets because they're cheap. And we're going to let them do their Facebook and their YouTubing on tablets that we're going to give them. And we're going to take all these other machines, we're going to take them off the internet because this is your production environment. Well, we were able to sell the union on that idea because we basically had them after we're giving you a free Android tablet. And they were like, oh, this is awesome, this is so great, right? Free tablets, everybody. So yeah, was it a little bit smoke and mirrors? Absolutely. But here was the problem. In this particular scenario, with this particular business, their most important computer was already owned by the bad guys. And the only reason we got the call was occasionally the network would do, quote, quirky things. So what does this tell you? It tells you that manufacturing is at a risk. And this was also the whole issue with the fact that their drawings have been stolen, and then there was a Chinese company that was approaching their customers with exact duplicates. So they had a whole bunch of other security-related problems, theft of intellectual property, etc. So this was the case where we determined that they were at severe risk, and we had to come up with sort of a solution that met the business requirements, but also didn't inflame the union and cause major job action. So How at risk are your customers? Well, the data suggests that they're pretty seriously at risk, especially if you're supporting mom and pop stores that have some sort of credit card processing capability, okay? That machine cannot be a general purpose computer. If it is, it's probably got some sort of malware on it. And if the cyber criminals have identified that it's got point of sale software on it, there's a very good chance that the next piece of software that they're uploading to it is some sort of RAM scraper to start getting that information. So those machines need to be really locked down. And the web protection piece that we talked about does a great job of preventing these machines from going to sites that could lead them to a malicious infection, but also can prevent and detect traffic from those machines that shouldn't be going on, that should not be happening. One of the interesting things is that researchers found 4 times as many breaches in small organizations. This is an opportunity for you guys to be heroes. This is an opportunity in the MSP and small business space to roll out a few inexpensive tools and really prevent a pretty devastating attack on businesses. And this is your win. This is the huge thing. And it's patch management, folks. According to the Australian DSD, who looked at 35 security controls, patching the operating system and patching third-party applications are the big win. They're in the number 2 and the number 3 spot in terms of effectiveness of cybersecurity controls. Antivirus is down at 18. And the only reason, in my opinion, is because antivirus is the one thing businesses understand. I have to have antivirus. But web content filtering is in spot 11, okay? And email filtering is in spot 12, okay? So when you really think about it, if you rolled out a service offering that included patch management, antivirus, because you have to have it, and either email filtering or web content filtering, you've hit some of the top controls to help your business out and prevent it. Make it hard to hack. Make it resilient. This, combined with the managed service offering, which is a fixed monthly price, actually gives you more money because you're hearing from your customers less and they are happier because you've given them an efficient and secure machine. This is the number that really shocks a lot of people. There are 10 problems. Okay, there's not 99 problems. There's 10 problems. There's 10 vulnerabilities out there that cyber criminals have been exploiting in the last year, all disclosed. Okay, so we're not talking about 0 days. Responsible for 99.9% of exploits. That's it. That's it. There's 10 patches essentially out there, vulnerabilities that you need to apply. Okay? Only 3 exploits out of 100 use a different vulnerability. Isn't that shocking? Doesn't that just kind of go, holy crap? Are you telling me, Ian, that Adobe Reader, if I keep it patched and updated, I'm going to have a really effective security envelope for that customer? I'm going to say, yes, you are. And if you're keeping Java up to date, and maybe you could even uninstall Adobe Flash, that would be really awesome if you did that. Because I am very anti Adobe Flash, and you'll understand why in a moment. You know, Shockwave, who's actually using it in a business context? I would say nobody. And then, you know, keeping your Microsoft Office up to date. Okay, that's it. That's all you guys need to do, and all of a sudden you're hard to hack, you've got business resiliency, your customers are happy because they're not getting crypto-lockered. There's a lot of great stuff going on there. Books. I love books, I love to read. If you want to know about the dirtbags in Russia that are doing cybercrime, read Brian Krebs's book. Okay? Get it on your Kindle or whatever, read it, it's hilarious, it's funny, it's interesting, it reads like a crazy kind of James Bond-ish novel, but he breaks ground on how we all started. How did we get here? It all started with spam. Okay? It all started with Russian cyber criminals trying to make my penis hard, okay, by giving me access to pills cheaply. Okay? And it evolved from there. Really interesting stuff. If you want to go crazy and know about like serious cyber weapons, if you're a fan of Stuxnet, if you follow these Saudi Aramco 30,000 bricked computers. If you want to talk about pipelines exploding in Turkey with like attacks on critical infrastructure with cyber weapons, Kim Zettler's the executive editor of Wired, and her book will knock your socks off. It's awesome, and it really talks about like destruction of infrastructure with viruses and malware. Very cool. So let's talk about how and why we're reduced to 10 vulnerabilities that are out there. 10 things that we got to patch, okay? Now, the vulnerabilities of this software can be in different pieces of software. I'm not saying patch 10 things. I'm saying patch these 10 types of vulnerabilities that are out there, because this is how it all works, guys. Patch comes out, the bad guys see what it fixes. Okay? Then they reverse engineer it to see if they can break what it fixes. Okay? And this is really important to consider, because when I build and reverse engineer a patch that comes out for a 2008 box, I'm pretty sure that based on the backward compatibility requirements of that 2008 box, my exploit is going to go after those 2003 servers as well. And I'll tell you, after 14th July 2015, the patches stop and the party starts, because I'm going to target 2003 boxes. So we reverse engineer and break what it fixes. Okay? Now what do? We build an exploit package. Okay? We build something that allows us the gold of hacking called remote code execution, RCE. RCE is what everybody wants to go for. If I can pop calculator up on your desktop by sending you a document, I win. That's what I want to do. I want to pop calculator. That's part of the whole thing. And it's really cool if I can make the calculator also say 1337, yo, because I'm elite, right? Anyways, my point is you build your exploit package, okay, and then you sell it. Okay, you're hands off. You don't want to get dirty, man. You want to make your $12,200. Why do I say $12,200 US dollars? Anybody out here familiar with http.sys? There's a vulnerability that was disclosed about 3 weeks ago, right by the crazy dude that runs SANS, Ulrich, and Dr. Ulrich Hans, I think it is. I'm saying it totally wrong. I faked my Swedish accent there. Please forgive me. Anyways, http.sys, it's on all the things. It's on all your boxes. It's Windows. It's exposed if you're running Internet Information Server, which about 30% of the world is, sadly, because I guess they didn't get the news about how cool Apache is. But anyways, so these folks, what can you do with http.sys? You can send it one packet of data, and what did it do? It rebooted, or it froze. Cool, right? So I can reboot all the things, and I can make some mischief. So what's really hilarious, guys, is at the presentation, Dr. Ulrich Hans, he said, it's only a matter of time before the cyber criminals figure out how to get RCE, remote code execution. And in fact, Microsoft flagged this bug as remote code execution capable. All right? So Microsoft knew it is not a good thing. They pushed out a patch. About 10 days later, on one of the underground forums that I think Harold's computer surfs, not mine. Well, I might have had remote access to Harold's computer when I was surfing it. But Harold's computer showed me for $12,200 US dollars a remote code execution bug based on that bug. So boom, 10 days later, $12,200 US dollars. The opportunity to exploit any unpatched box was there. Boom. So what does that mean? It means if you've got an install base of 30% of the world, okay, that had IIS running, let's say that only 10% out of those 30% of computers actually got patched regularly, probably because they didn't have super cool MSPs looking after their stuff. It meant 20% of those IIS boxes were vulnerable to a remote code exploit because they were unpatched, and I can build a worm. Anyone here, take a guess, to scan the entire IP4 address space, like the entire address space, okay, for Windows 2003 IIS servers. Anyone hazard a guess how long that would take? Just throw a number out there.
A day?
A day? Okay. So a day. Anyone think longer, shorter?
Shorter.
Shorter? Okay, how shorter?
12 hours.
12 hours? Okay. So a Minnesota research team did it on a 10 gigabit per second backbone in an hour. How did they do it? Apache Hadoop. So what they did was they used something called ZMap, and ZMap is a multi-threaded MapReduce application that they wrote for Apache Hadoop that can go out and search for any vulnerability on the internet and insert the entire IP4 address space. So what does that tell you? It tells me that the bad guys would be able to target all of those machines, take them, send them this one packet of data, force a reboot, remote code exploit, and build a giant botnet. Boom, 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 done. So botnet spear phishing, how does this all happen? So once you have a box, what do? You start making it send out your attacks. So this is why us, MSPs, Logic Now, want you guys to implement these pieces because, like I said, every time Sony gets mega hacked, we suffer, the internet suffers. So the idea here is if you make your small medium businesses hard to hack and be good net citizens and don't turn them into these exploit spewing bots, we will enjoy the internet. And it won't be the equivalent of the gas fight in Zoolander. Because we know how hilarious it is when they finally, when they light up the cigarette and everybody catches on fire, okay? It's a great analogy for cybersecurity. We all know what's coming in that particular regard. So really, I put these icons up there because what we're talking about is your vectors of attack. It's email, right? And we talked about a great product that we have to deal with that. Web, again, great product. USB sticks and over-the-wire attacks. Okay? A lot of the times, and some of the biggest hacks, where a USB stick is thrown into the parking lot of a government organization that, well, a three-letter organization, the CIA, and the Chinese got into classified and unclassified networks in the CIA by leaving a USB stick in the parking lot that some analyst plugged into a classified machine. And it happened again in Iraq, okay? The government classified DoD network got infected with viruses because some dude picked up a USB stick in the streets of Basra and decided that it would be a good idea to jam it into his computer, okay? So, again, I'm being a little bit dramatic here. What I'm saying, you guys, is your common vectors of attack are hopefully not millions of USB sticks that are lying out there for your users to jam into computers. And in general, because you're not idiots, you have a firewall in front of it, so you're not, hopefully, putting point-of-sale terminals in one audit that I did directly on the internet. And at the vendor's insistence, in order to make their product work, you had to turn off the Windows firewall. Okay? So imagine, internet, XP box, Windows firewall off. How long do you think it takes to infect something that is just on the raw internet? Not longer, okay? So these are some of the things that we're talking about for the threat. So Carbonic Attack. This is the fun one, guys, because this is the one that's going to blow your mind. So what was the loss? Between 300 million and 1 billion US dollars came out of mostly Russian banks, okay? Mostly Russian banks. And so how did the bad guys get in? What was this super hack that the bad guys did? They sent them a Word document that had exploits from 2012, 2013, and 2014, and all three had been patched, okay, within 6 months. So what does this tell me? Well, it tells me a couple things. A bank thought they were super secure because they had a good perimeter. The Russians probably also have a cavalier attitude towards licensing their software, so I think they may not even been either eligible for updates because it was unlicensed, or they just didn't decide to patch. So what does this tell us, guys? It tells us that patch management here would have stopped a $300 million to $1 billion loss if these banks have been patched and updated, period. The next thing is, look what else that they attached. A CPL file. Okay, we're old school here, guys. This is 1995 called, and Windows 95 called, and they want their CPLs back. Okay, This is a really old way of trying to take over a machine, okay? Embarrassingly old, all right? And any web content filtering or even up-to-date Outlook would have prevented you from running a .cpl. I mean, come on, this is basic, right? But wait, it gets better. The Trojan that they were using, I think I've got this on the next page. Yeah. Okay, this is exciting. The Trojan malware that they were using was 4 years old. Okay, 4 years. Do you think any, I don't care how crappy your antivirus is, okay, even Windows Security Essentials, okay, will probably get a Trojan that's 4 years old, not modified, not tweaked, nothing. I'm talking about a piece of malware like Poison Ivy, okay, that was used 4 years ago to own everything in Lockheed Martin, being used again, this attack, like 2015. Unbelievable, my head's exploding. So, a couple of things here. Evidence indicating that in most cases the network was compromised, okay? This indicates the worst case scenario is the banks in question had 6 months to deploy the appropriate attack, patches, okay? That's a good SLA. If I'm an MSP, a 6-month SLA seems pretty reasonable. I might be able to live up to my customers' expectations, right? This is unbelievable. Now, there was some sophisticated technology here because this attack defeated two-factor authentication. And you're going like, whoa, Ian, holy crap, like two-factor authentication, how did they do that? You're gonna love this, okay? You remember the movie Ocean's 11, okay, where there's a picture of the vault, okay, and they put up a video loop of the vault being, like, not being emptied, okay? But really, Brad Pitt and Clooney are in the vault along with like a midget Chinese guy, and they take all the money out, but the guys in the security operations center are just seeing that everything's okay in the vault. This is how this attack happened. So the JavaScript that was part of the malware package that was in a Microsoft doc file, okay, introduced a screen in front of the screen. And the screen that they were looking at had there was a problem authenticating you to your account. Please call this 1-800 number. The bad guys had set up a fake call center, okay? And the deal is that you were trying to log in, it was a Friday before some sort of Russian banking holiday, I'm sure, and you just want to get the hell out of the office. And you're trying to authenticate to the banking system, and you've got your token, and you're putting in your code, and then it pops up this screen saying, call the 1-800, we need to verify you. Well, they had con artists with a 10-minute, okay, a 10-minute, we need to verify this, I need to check that, I need to look up this information, would you please hold for 3 minutes at each time? Okay, what was I actually doing? With my 4-year-old remote Trojan, I am actually, had you put in your correct code, I am now banking on your system while you're looking at an error message. I am in your system actually legitimately transferring money to Peruvian banks, which then vomited out this to a bunch of money mules, and I took all your money. Okay? This is an old school con job. Okay? This is the equivalent of me taking a piece of paper and sliding it in front of my marks when I come home from school and showing mom that I got an A, when actually I have a D behind me. Okay? So this was a really interesting, it was old school, it was one of those things where it was mostly an attack or a con, and nobody bothered to check and see if that 1-900 or 1-800 number, I would have made a 1-900 number, so I made a little bit of money every time somebody called to complain about the fact that the banking app wasn't working. You always want to monetize that kind of thing. But the point is nobody checked the number. Nobody checked to see if that was the legitimate number that they should be calling if there was a problem with the banking app. So there's all sorts of security fail. It was really cool. Okay, we're getting close down here towards the end. We're talking for a little bit. How do we win? How do the MSPs win in cybersecurity? It's simple. Less applications, less vulnerability. If you're not using it in a business context, time to uninstall it. Okay? Lower the threat threshold. And like I said, if you can live in a world that doesn't include pictures and little videos of cats, then maybe think about getting rid of Adobe Flash. Because after a month ago, when there was an Adobe Flash vulnerability, followed by an Adobe Flash vulnerability, followed by an Adobe Flash vulnerability with a patch, with a patch, with a patch, we're losing our minds, okay? Adobe has to go, okay? Patch and update your operating systems, patch and update your third-party applications, okay? If only there was a tool, guys. If only there was a tool that allowed you to patch the operating system and patch those third-party applications out there. Okay? I don't know, maybe you might have some thoughts about that tool later that you can use. Remove administrative privileges, okay? A lot of these attacks have to do with the ability to install their malware in the first place, okay? So by removing administrative privileges from your users, I know it's a pain in the ass because they're going to call you and they're going to say, I need this software installed right away, and all these terrible things. But to be honest with you, it's a lot worse when you have to go and restore a whole bunch of data from a CryptoLocker attack. So think about it in the long game, okay? Application whitelist is a technology I'm super excited about, and if you're a company right now that builds an application whitelisting application, you'll probably join an antitrust lawsuit because guess what, guys? In Windows 10, it comes with the operating system. Way cool. It's called App Locker. Check it out. It's going to be awesome for us in the IT services space because you're going to be able to say, run programs from SQL and program files slash star. Run programs from SQL and program files bracket x86 close brackets. Run programs from SQL and Windows backslash star. Don't run anything from SQL and backslash users. That's it. Defeats CryptoLocker. Because in every CryptoLocker attack, some user somewhere downloads an executable stub, okay, to their SQL and users directory. And then they launch it. And because they have local admin privileges in a lot of cases, it now encrypts all their things. Okay? So Microsoft is going to really help us out with Windows 10. It's got some super cool features as well, like the ability to alert you if somebody jams a USB drive into it. Super cool. BitLocker, okay, I ran it, and I gotta say it's solid, guys. I installed a whole bunch of security tools on Windows 10, fully expecting it to puke and get super unexcited about this. This was on a 5-year-old tablet that I pimped out with an SSD drive, okay, 5 gigs of RAM, okay, a Toshiba M700. Installed Windows 10, took it, had to download a few drivers, could get Windows 7 64 drivers, and they went into the machine just fine, it was rocking. I ran Kane Enable, Wireshark, Nmap, a whole bunch of IT tools, rock solid. I'm telling you, this is the killer operating system. It's going to be awesome. The coolest thing though is I had a 2012 R264 image of a server, and this machine joined it to the domain and then pushed out a GPO to do total disk encryption across all of the machines that would have been in that domain in 4 minutes. Okay? No excuses to not have full disk encryption on every laptop moving forward into Windows 10. No excuses. It's awesome. Really impressive. Figure out your software and hardware. So one of the things in security, which is sort of like very helpful to the MSPs, because you guys build great networks, by the way, you're like the Navy SEALs of building neural networks and figuring them out and fixing them. Try and get really good at firewall rules. Try and standardize on one type of firewall that you know really, really well. Because I get this question all the time, Ian, what do you think the best firewall is? And I'm like, it's the one that you know the best. Right? I'm not going to go and say, WatchGuard's great or SonicWall is great. I don't care. I just want to make sure that you guys know how to write firewall rules, right? Like that maybe prevent workstations from trying port 53 UDP outbound to Pakistan. Maybe just write one firewall rule that says only the domain controller can talk to Pakistan. No, I'm just kidding on that, but maybe to 8.8.8.8. I've beaten up the Project Zero guys from Google. I said, when are you guys going to go back to your roots, man? And they're like, Ian, what are you talking about? I said, when are you just going to get really good at 8.8.8.8 and 8.8.4.4? That would be really fantastic if you just invested some time in that. So figure out your software and your firewalls. Look at security awareness or partnering up with a firm that does security awareness training. As a break-fix guy or an MSP guy, this will come back to you. They will break less stuff. Okay? As an MSP, the less broken stuff means the more money because you don't have to go out there and fix broken stuff. You see where I'm going with this? So either get an app, do some security awareness training, some basic stuff, prevent mom from clicking on pictures of cats, all huge wins. If you get a little bit more creative, you can start looking at SANS 20, NIST standards, Australian DSD 35s, okay? But I just want to say sometimes buying more of everything doesn't help us, okay? Doesn't help us. Sometimes making some strategic investments around things like user awareness training, okay, will go way further, right, than the most expensive IDS. I've seen alien vaults, okay, that people shelled out $10,000 for. After 3 months, they ignore what's coming out of it because they get so overwhelmed. It's super cool and it's super fancy. Yes, it is, okay? But like any piece of technology, if you don't really know it well, why do you even have it in the first place? What do we need to get good at? What is the action call? The call to action here is we need to look at detective controls. We need to know when a network is compromised. So how do we do that? Well, we need to lessen our chances that it gets compromised in the first place. Because finding something that is difficult, chasing ghosts inside a network, is a difficult prospect at best. So what do? Let's talk about being preventive. Let's talk about patch management, web content filtering, email content filtering, up-to-date antivirus, all great stuff. At the end of the day though, you need to understand that the battle for malware is really at the network layer, okay? If you got an infected network, you can live with that infected network if the bad guys cannot get the data out of your system, okay? So what do I mean by that? Get good at firewalling, okay? When a customer comes to you and says, we want port such and such open, okay? Don't open it to the entire internet. Ask them, what do you want to do? Oh, this vendor is asking for it. Why? Because the vendor needs to have this port open so that the software we have can check a license. Fantastic. One firewall IP address now is allowed into that network, only inbound from a particular IP address. Do not open port 666 to the internet because a vendor says, I need it open to the internet. Ask the vendor, so what IP address is going to be connecting from 6666 to 6666, okay? That's what we have to get good at. We don't want to just open everything to the internet, okay? It's been a crappy experience when we do that, all right? Like anyone here running VNC, open to the internet, or RDP, you guys see those failed login authentications? Not cool. Firewalls. There's a lot of talk in the industry now about next generation firewalls and everything like that, okay? Don't believe the hype. You only need a next generation firewall if your customer is hosting an on-premise web application, okay? In a lot of cases, the firewall that you're using right now, as long as you keep it up to date at the firmware level, it's going to serve you well, especially if you know how to write good rules with that firewall, all right? So please, don't think that just because this new FortiGate thing comes out, that you have to rush out and buy it and it will somehow secure your customers better than the actual on-premise firewall that you know every rule in it and you know the business reason why that rule is there. Okay? So what I'm telling you guys is be very careful about that kind of hardware vendor that comes at you and says, you know, you put this magic blinky box in front of your network and you're going to be safe. Well, maybe. Is what I'm going to say. The last piece here. This is the one thing that is the takeaway for MSPs and break-fix guys. You got to get good at backup. You have to have a rock-solid backup. This is 2015, okay? Losing a workstation is forgivable, okay? You're going to lose it. Users do crazy stuff. It happens. You know, fire, famine, flood, all that, okay? You lose my server and the data on my server, I'm firing you. You're done, okay? So that's why I say to folks is that if there's one thing that you can get really good at and one offer that you can make to your customers is I've got a plan and a backup of your data. And if there was only an application that you could put on a machine that would make a copy of your data and store it on a server somewhere in this nebulous cloud thing. If there was only some software that could do that, I hope maybe you have a solution for these fine gentlemen this morning in that area. What I'm saying is one backup is not enough. What we do, and I ran an MSSP for 4 years, what we do is we use the native Windows backup and do a full system image daily to a portable hard drive, and then we use this backup application called Managed Online Backup, and we make a copy of the data and we push it up to the cloud. Okay? We have 2 backups at every customer site, and we have a UPS on everything. And we have gone really, really extensively and noticed that for that $250 investment in a UPS, it has a net reduction of about 20% of support calls, right off the bat. If your router, your switch, your server, and your wireless access point are on UPSs, you can look forward to about a 20% reduction in service calls, right off the bat. So, I'm Ian Trump, the security lead for Logic Now. Thank you. I know I went a little bit over. I got pretty excited there in the B section when we talked about the Carbonic Attack. Please forgive me, but I really appreciate it, and we'll turn things over to Johan now.
Well,
am I saying your name right?
Johan.
Oh, Johan. Okay.
Yeah, whatever.
All right. Okay. Please forgive my Canadianness. I spend most of my time apologizing for what Americans say to my European executive. As a Canadian, I'll apologize for anybody. That's what we do. Thanks very much. It's good.